We're almost ready to at least, well, maybe initiate stage 2, which, as I described it, was this very different kind of material out there, which is more philosophical in nature, and which kind of revolves around this notion of, well, satellites, then actual manned spaceships flying up there in orbit and then reaching the moon. Well, all that, plus the phantasmatic elaboration of so-called interstellar flights, which have not yet been achieved. All this, well, sort of participates in or pertains to what may be described as a form of radical escapism, a way of losing the earth for good, of uprooting oneself and losing touch with the ground or with the earth as it is. So this, of course, has very clear resonances for those of you who are familiar with certain writings by Husserl or Heidegger. The earth in particular is, of course, an important and most intriguing concept that Heidegger worked out in some of his later works. We're starting with the famous text on the origins of the work of art, where the earth assumes this function of a, not so much that of a grounding or a kind of primary place or seat of humanity to which you could reconnect whenever necessary, but something much more, in fact, much more intriguing and possibly terrifying, which is the opening beneath us of something that really stands beyond the sphere of human occupation and agitation, something that could be described as an outside beneath us, something that opens up a sort of void or hollow space or extension of natural space beneath our feet. So in a way, I would say the earth as a concept in Heidegger is already beyond any naturalistic variety of grounding that you may have in mind. It's not about reconnecting to the familiar place, your dwelling place. It's not about reconnecting with the earth as a mix of natural landscapes and physical gravity. It is something much more obscure, in fact, which bizarrely reconnects with the outside of not the sky, but the stellar void, empty space. That very space which space exploration attempts to conquer. So it's an interesting, in fact, dialectic of grounding and ungrounding, of rootedness and uprootedness, which you could find in Heidegger if you were to dig in those texts about the earth. The most maybe opaque and slightly creepy text about this earth to which we cannot really connect, which is presents itself as an abyss of sorts. So again, dialectically echoing the abyss or the void of space itself. Bear that in mind, because I'm going to say very nasty things about Heidegger, not myself. I'm not here to do any kind of debunking or demythologizing. I don't have any issues with Heidegger, especially not the kind of issues you may have if you think that reading the works from a Nazi is in itself problematic. And so I have absolutely no concern of that kind, at least in this context. I take you as adults, consenting adults who can take it, right? It would be different in high school if I were to teach a class in philosophy and especially use certain texts by Heidegger about the folk and such notions. Here I take Heidegger I will approach Heidegger through the particular lens, which is Arendt, although she almost never quotes him directly on that issue of the space age. It's like a baseline that you can discern in her text. I mean, the human condition, and which is 1957, and the other text which I sent you, The Conquest of Space and the Stature of Man, which is slightly later, 1962. Those two texts, Heidegger is not the focus of attention, but it's a baseline that is very palpable out there in the background. Lévinas and Blanchot, on the other hand, those two very short pieces, 1961 pieces, and very resembling. I mean, very, very, very close to each other for obvious reasons. I mean, Blanchot acknowledges that he had prior knowledge of Lévinas's ideas about Gagarin, as it is, the first man in space, the Russian cosmonaut, as they say. And here, the onslaught against Heidegger and what Lévinas describes as the Heideggerians is absolutely explicit. And it's, I count this text as among the most abrupt and hostile and violent that have been produced against Heidegger, because they go right to the heart of the matter, which is Heidegger's veneration or celebration of the place as a concept that shouldn't be trivialized, that shouldn't be taken for granted, but which comes with a load of implications and assumptions which are the opposite of such orientations in both Lévinas and Blanchot's thought. And the missing link and the crucial issue, I think, is to come to terms with the very notion of the outside, or the open, or the outside, depending on the translations you find. The concept is often what opens up itself, basically. In French, it would be l'ouvert, the open. And the way it is connected in a kind of interestingly intricate way in Heidegger within that other notion, which I just mentioned, which is place. Place and the open or the outside. How are these two concepts dialectically intertwined? That is the issue. And Blanchot and Lévinas, even more forcefully, have issues with the way the montage, the assemblage, has been performed by Heidegger, giving an undue privilege to place, and as a result, opening the way for an almost pagan promotion of all the values and all the associations that come with the idea of rootedness, of belonging to a particular place in the sense of a particular people and a particular history and natural environment, if you like. So this is very much perceptible at the background of Lévinas' text, and of course, one of the major issues for Lévinas is to kind of contrast Heidegger's paganism and his occasional adoption of certain Christian themes with what Lévinas perceives as being the essence of Judaism, of a certain idea of human freedom, which involves and sort of assumes as a positive value the very idea of uprootedness, and turns around the kind of negative connotation of that word and turns it into something to be cherished and cultivated. So